All right. Well, I want to welcome everyone to our Clarity webinar this afternoon. Our Clarity team is very excited to have you joining our call today. We're looking forward to a really great topic and having you all here. Before we get started, we want to do a little bit of housekeeping. I want to share with you that today is a webinar format. This means that all participants except for the presenters will be muted and off camera throughout the presentation. That does not mean, however, that you do not have a voice. So please use the chat feature or the Q&A feature and share with us throughout the presentation. We ask that you use the chat feature to share comments, emojis, and reactions, and you use the Q&A feature to ask any questions that you have for the presenters that you'd like us to ask during the Q&A period at the end of the presentation. If you'd like to go ahead and open up your chat and drop in where you're calling in from today, we'd love to hear from you. And now we're going to get started. So again, welcome to today's presentation. I am Lindsay Shaw. I'm the Senior Vice President at Clarity Technologies for our practice development and support. I also have moderating with me today Donna Walker, who is a Senior Practice Consultant for Clarity, and she works specifically with our startup program. Our presenters today are Fran Acunzo from Akara Partners. He's going to be sharing some of his extensive expertise and years of experience helping new practices get started. And his co-presenter is Robbie Grayson, who also has extensive experience opening many medical spas and practices. And she is one of our senior practice consultants here at Clarity with our startup program as well. So today we are going to be sharing with you about funding your startup program, the ABCs of acquiring a loan. We know that it takes a little bit more than just passion and skill to get your practice started. It's going to take some funding, and our presentation today is going to walk you through how to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Robbie, and she's going to give you a little bit of an introduction for our presentation today.
You're on mute, Rob.
Sorry about that. That is like, we would have expected for me to forget to take my mute off. Welcome, everyone. We're so excited to have you here. I imagine those of you who are here are probably already have a dream or a vision of opening a med spa. And so hopefully today you're going to get a lot of really, I believe, valuable information that will help you to decide whether you want to do this or not. I want to talk a little bit about our program and my relationship with Akara Partners and Fran Acunzo. Fran and I go back many, many, many years. And I'm not going to go through all of that, but 2002, I believe, is when we met, Fran.
Yeah.
Yes, and then I eventually worked with Fran at Akara Partners. He has been a mentor, taught me so much with his extensive experience. And upon joining Clarity, when we talked about a startup program, we wanted to do something that would give you everything that you need to open a practice, but it's a participatory. You are a part of this journey with us as opposed to us doing it for you. I wanted to, before we start, just throw a couple of interesting statistics out. And this came from AmSpa's annual report. This was the 2024 annual report. And in that report at that time, there were 10,488 med spas. That does not include our plastic surgeons who have non-surgical aesthetic services as well. This is just med spas. So 10,488, and in 2025, they anticipate that number to go to 12,346. And of that number, 18% will be new practices. Will they make it? Will they survive? Will they be able to get that funding? If they have good guidance, hopefully they will, and they can be successful. I continue to say, there has never been a better time to be in the medical aesthetic arena than right now. So with that, and I'm going to turn it over to Fran Acunzo, and Fran, take it away. I'm sure this will be a great presentation.
Thank you, Robbie. Hi, everybody. Well, why don't we start at the beginning? The first thing you're gonna ask yourself when you're about to launch a new practice or a med spa is, how much money do I need? So that's the first, that's the starting point. You know, if you need money for business startup, equipment purchasing, acquiring a med spa, if you're looking to acquire a med spa or an aesthetic practice. So let's take each one of these at a time. Lindsay. Okay, so startup costs. First off, there's the construction cost, and in the construction costs, there's three main buckets: building costs, architectural and design cost, the fees for the professionals, and building permits. In addition to that, once you build it, you have to put everything into it. So furniture, fixture, and equipment. So you need to determine what your construction costs will be by working with designers, architects, and contractors. And then you need to determine how much you're going to buy to equip the location. Then the setup. These are fees that people forget about. You know, you have your professional fees, your accounting fees, legal fees, consultants. You have marketing, the pre-opening marketing. So putting together your branding, your website, your web development, printing costs for your brochures and things of that nature. So they're ready the day you open. Advertising campaign as far as the pre-opening advertising. You just don't open your doors day one and then start telling people you're there. You need to start telling people about what you're doing, you know, a month, 2 months, 3 months before you open your doors. So there's that cost. Pre-opening payroll. This could be significant. First off, the team doesn't start the day you open your doors. The team starts at least 2 weeks, if not 3 weeks prior, for training and to be prepared to open your doors and service your clients. But your manager typically will start a month to 2 months ahead of time to help with the preparation. So there's that cost involved. Then there's the pre-opening rent and utilities. Now, you may be lucky enough to negotiate it, timing paying the rent just when you open your doors. That's unusual. Oftentimes, there's a month, 2 months, whatever it may be, of rent that you're paying out and or utilities as well. Prepaid insurance. You know, you need med-mal, you need general liability, you need property. Now, med-mal, you may be able to start pretty much the day you open your doors and you're providing your service. But your general liability and your property insurance, that has to begin the day you start your construction, the day they give you the key to get into the location. So there's that cost. Prepaid interest, people forget about this one all the time. So let's say you have an $800,000 loan. Well, before you open your doors, you're going to be drawing on that loan. As you draw on that loan, you're going to start paying the interest on the amount that you're drawing down. So that could begin 4 or 5 months prior to opening your door, that you have prepaid interest, or really it's not so much prepaid, it's pre-opening interest. And then, of course, the inventories and the supplies, the soft goods, not the equipment that we talked about. This is the retail products, the sundries and things like that, the Q-tips, etc. So there's a lot of cost to really think about and make sure you know how much all of this will amount to. And then this is probably the most difficult category because it's nebulous. The working capital that you need to make sure that you can cover the losses in those first 3, 4, 6, 9 months even. So you can't, what you don't want to do is blow all your money to open up and have no money left, because you're going to lose money in the first 3 months, 6 months, whatever. And you need cash to be able to be infusing it into the operation, because you have to make sure that you fully operate and you fully market your location in order to be successful. So we see this being anywhere from 50,000 to 150,000 ready, sitting in the bank to be invested into the operation after you open your doors. Did we skip over one, Lindsay? No, okay, good. So there's a few ways you can borrow, especially when purchasing equipment. You know, we like it and we recommend that you try to package your equipment purchases into your total loan. It is better for your cash flow. You know, cash is king when you launch a business. And if you're paying it over a 10-year loan versus a 3 or 5 year lease, it's less expensive. It will cost you more in the long run, but on a monthly basis, it will be less, which will give you a better head start, a running start. So leasing 3 to 5 year terms, little to no cash up front. Like with a loan, you need an equity portion, 80%, 20%, and the loan portion, 80%. Similar to like a mortgage on a house or buying a home. With a lease, there's no cash up front. No buyout oftentimes if you negotiate the lease correctly at the end. Or it could be a buyout. It depends on how you set that up. Essentially, and let me just harp on the con here mostly. The con is the fact that to buy it, to say to buy $300,000 of equipment and pay it over 3 years is a lot more difficult than paying it over 10 years. So if you can secure a large enough bank loan to cover the equipment costs, that's the best route to take. Lindsay, thank you. Acquiring a business. Another great way to get into a practice, a med spa or a medical practice, is to acquire an existing practice. It's up and running. Most likely, it's already making money. Now, there's obviously a significant cost to this, but what's nice is day one, you're making money. But think about when you acquire a business, you need consultants, you need to pay legal, you need to pay accounting. Brokers, not often. Usually the broker is paid by the seller. So once in a while, there may be some broker cost if you have like a buyer broker, but not often. Then, of course, there's the price of the business. And these businesses sell for everything from one-time sales to 3 to 6 times EBITDA. It just depends on many different factors. And business brokers and consultants are very helpful in identifying what the correct price of a business should be. Most likely, there could be new technology needed. And when you buy a business, you want to add new services or new technologies, more revenue stream. So there's that cost. Usually some leasehold improvement. the business you're buying may be 10 years old and they haven't remodeled since day one. Well, you're gonna probably want to give it a little bit of a facelift. And then working capital. Be ready. When a business sells, it's sort of a little bit of a shakeup. And oftentimes they dip initially. They'll come back, but that initial dip, you need to be ready with some cash in your pocket to cover any unexpected costs. What do you need to get money? Well, it's easy. It's the 4 C's: concept, credibility, credit, and collateral. Much easier said than done. Let's look at the first one. Concept. You need to make sure you've identified your mission as a business. Clearly identified your program. The detail of what categories of services and what services exactly am I going to be offering? And then outline the market. Who am I selling these services to? And also try to identify the size of market in your market area that you do business in. Okay. The next is credibility. You can't go to the bank and say, give me $1 million. You need credibility. They've got to believe you can do this. Start with the feasibility study, competitive analysis, target demographics, a complete financial model, itemizing the startup costs, forecasting your revenue, expenses based on the concept, a 5-year profit and loss financial pro forma. This is typically where you really do need help from a consultant to support this process. Somebody who has done it many, many times before. And then all of this, everything from the feasibility study to the financials, along with the concept, has to be poured into a business plan, identifying the keys to success, identifying your management team, and showing the bank that you have an experienced team, whether it be a management team or providers, nurse practitioners, physicians, etc. That's just really important to make sure you have the right team together. Credit. Okay. Hopefully you have no bankruptcies, at least nothing in the past 5 years. And your credit scores are over 700. Typically, we see credit scores needing to be over 700 for the banks to have the confidence in lending the money. And lastly, collateral. You need some money. You can't have nothing in the bank or in real estate or securities and think the bank will give you 100% of a loan. You need to have either real estate, securities, savings. The business itself becomes collateral, or other businesses that you have can become collateral. So this is very important. And that has to do with, we're talking about equity financing, debt financing. Equity financing is nothing more than the money you put in. Now we can talk about where that money will come from, but it's hard, cold cash. There you go. And debt financing is the loan. And then we'll talk about investment risk in a minute. Equity financing. It could be personal investment, money you save in the bank. It could be money from friends and family that are willing to back you. They believe in you. It could be from angels and venture capital, though we don't see many angels or venture capital doing this. And if it does, it's because it's a personal relationship with an angel investor or a venture capital group. Or it could be private equity. And typically with private equity, they don't do one-offs. They're looking at larger projects. So if you're buying a chain of 10 locations, you may be able to get private equity excited about that, especially if you have a plan to roll that out into 20 locations in the next 2 years. And then debt financing. So commercial loans, the banks can give you loans and or a line of credit, usually both. Oftentimes when they provide you a loan, they'll also give you a line of credit. There's non-bank lenders, wouldn't necessarily recommend them. The SBA involvement. People get confused. People think that the SBA lends the money. SBA lends no one money. Banks lend money. Banks are backed by the SBA. They're members of the SBA. So if it's an SBA loan, it's sanctioned. It's a loan by the bank, sanctioned by the SBA, is how it works. So the best thing to do is go with a bank that is actually a preferred SBA lender. You don't want to work with a non-preferred lender. It's much too difficult. There's always lease financing. There's another form of debt financing, as we talked about earlier. Credit cards, not recommending that, but that's a form of financing. Friends and family in the form of loans versus equity. Instead of giving you the money, they lend you the money. And you should document that, legally document it, have an attorney draft a note that everybody signs. And then, of course, collateral. It's just really important with debt financing because oftentimes the bank, it's funny, some banks, not all banks, it depends. With SBA financing, most of the banks don't need collateral for the loan because the SBA is guaranteeing it. Now, if you didn't have an SBA guarantee, you then need the collateral that you will guarantee the loan with. But even with an SBA loan, let's say you have $1 million that you need to invest, SBA loan is going to be $800,000. The SBA will they will guarantee 80% of that of the $800,000. The bank may not, but may look for collateral on the difference there. So it's just something to be aware of. Robbie, did you want to take this? And you're on mute.
Perfect. There we go. Absolutely. So this is just to help you understand the difference between an SBA loan and a conventional loan. And I will be honest with you, in my development, the majority of our loans have been SBA loans. But the SBA, we see that they will loan, they expect 15 to 20% of cash injection. This is your equity cash that you're putting into the business. They guarantee, as Fran just shared, 80% of the loan. So that collateral needed is for the 20%. So in Fran's illustration, he talked about 800,000. So 20%, 160,000 is you're going to have collateral for that. There are fees with SBA loans, and they will finance those fees. So they will put those into the loan. So, but just know that. The other thing about an SBA loan is that typically I tell people to expect 6 weeks from start to finish on turnaround once it goes to the underwriter and so on and so forth. A conventional loan is, I don't know if it's okay if I say this, but I'm going to say it. This is for people that have money and they don't, then they have collateral and they don't want to pay the fees for the SBA and they just want to go in. So interest rates, I think that depends on your credit score and other things like that. But I think the biggest thing to note here is the collateral versus SBA versus conventional. With a conventional loan, that entire $800,000 you would have to have collateral for. So,
Yes.
and I think we have a little illustration here that we did just to show you, in this case, our total startup costs on this project is $1,413,179. The equity injection from the owner is $258,34, and the landlord is putting toward the construction cost what's called tenant improvement money that's negotiated in the lease of $127,596. So the required loan is $1,034,749, and then we've got the financing, as you can see here, the 10 years. Fran touched on that versus leasing. But what's important is to note down here that 80% of the loan amount, $1,034,749, the SBA will guarantee that. That 904 is guaranteed by SBA. The tenant, so the difference is the collateral you would need to guarantee that 20% of the loan. So just a little illustration there.
Robbie, just to make sure we're clear, when we say collateral, we're talking about real estate,
Yes.
securities. It could be a cash in the bank.
Yep.
That's what is considered collateral.
And the bank will require you to sign that collateral over. I mean, they have the right to that collateral, so you can't just go out and get rid of that collateral unless you've paid the loan down to a point or something that's, you know, there are opportunities to do that as your loan gets lower. But yeah.
Yeah.
Collateral is the whatever you have, real estate, CDs, stocks, securities, etc. So here's the loan process. This is what I experience when I work with our clients. The bank will ask you for a personal financial statement, 2 years of tax returns, and then you'll meet first with someone who will sort of pre-qualify you, talk about, you know, you'll talk about where you are with your assets and so on and so forth. And then that loan goes to a committee. And that's a group of professionals that the bank has assembled to go through and read that business plan that Fran alluded to, go through your pro forma, your financials, and what you're looking to borrow the money for. And they will decide whether you're a good risk, basically, and whether to move forward or not with the loan. Now, that doesn't mean you've got the loan yet. That just means now you've gotten in front of the, you're able to go to underwriting. Underwriting are those people at the bank that dot all the I's and cross all the T's, that make sure that everything that you've put in that business plan, that your startup costs, they'll want to see your quotes. All of those things have to be assembled in a way that the underwriter can understand them. They may ask you, where did you come up with these revenue numbers? And you need to be able to explain that to them. I've had many conversations with underwriters, and I can explain our process. So the underwriter is like I said, they're going through all the due diligence that you've done to put all this information together. You also have to have a lease or a location. So the bank is not going to loan you money before you have a lease or a place to do business. So that's one of the important things. Then we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, but they'll account for any monies that you've put in. So here's another thing that I think people don't think about. There's a period of time before you've got the loan that you may have invested up to $100,000, right? Working with a consultant, taking training. A lot of people go and get advanced aesthetics training if they're in another field of medicine. All of that money that you spend is still a part of your startup cost So track those expenditures, because they would go against your equity financing. So make sure you track that and keep up with it. And then the bank will make sure that you have the appropriate insurance. They may have you put a life insurance policy on yourself even, or the insurance, of course, for the project before the project actually begins. And then at that point, the loan closes, if you've met all the criteria of the bank that you're dealing with. The funds are either released all at once, or they're released on a draw basis. That's typically what we see, that, you know, as your general contractor has a draw for payment of a certain amount of the construction, the bank then covers that as they receive it. So that's a process, and that just depends on your bank and their processes. So, and then the other thing that is good to know, and we sort of pointed it out a little bit in that other, we did point it out in the other illustration, that tenant improvement money. So these are all things to think about when you are going into your project, when you're looking at leases and negotiating leases. You know, if you can get more tenant improvement money, that's less money that you have to borrow. So you need to understand that relationship. But one other thing that's real important about that particular relationship is that many times the landlord does not release that tenant improvement money until the project's finished. So you also need to make sure that in your loan, your lender understands that, and that funds are accounted for, that you're going to pay back when you get that tenant improvement money. But it can be a surprise if you don't understand that relationship with your TI during that period that you're under construction and before you get that money released from the landlord. So that is the loan process. I did mention earlier that the SBA loan SBA can take up to 8 weeks, again, depending on the lender, depending on if they're a lender that's comfortable in this space. There are lenders that just deal with veterinarians and dentists, and then there are med spas. So if they understand the space a little more, maybe it wouldn't take quite so long. We did mention, or I did mention in the last slide, that you can't get a loan without a lease. So you need to make sure that, and you can go and be pre-qualified. You can still start with the bank, and that's a whole different conversation. But one of the things that we always recommend when you are going to the, when you're getting your loan, if you haven't signed, sometimes the landlord expects you to sign that lease. They won't hold the property for you. You have to sign it. Make sure in your lease, if you've signed a lease before you've been approved for a loan, that you have a contingency put in that lease that if the loan does not come through, you're not obligated to lease that property. So that's one of the little things that we always cover and make sure for our clients. Fran, I'm gonna let you talk about this.
Sure. Investment risk. It's interesting. To some people, this is counterintuitive, but let's talk about investment risk and how this works. Basically, higher risk is higher reward. And let's go through an illustration to see what I mean. So if you have high debt, which equals high risk, which equals high reward. So invest $70,000 with $700,000 in debt, right? And say that yields a profit of $200,000 a year in stabilized year. So maybe it's year 3, 4, 5. Now, I think everybody would agree that you'd love to invest $70,000 to make $200,000. Even though it's a high risk, there's obviously a very high reward, a very high return on your investment. Now, let's go with the low risk, low debt, low risk, low reward. If you invest $500,000 instead of 70, same project, with 270 in debt instead of 700 in debt, same project. and you yield the profit of 200,000, well, you're investing 500,000 to make $200,000 versus investing 70,000 to make 200,000. So you can see that there is definitely high reward, though there's high risk when you have high debt. And there's almost no reward or very little reward with low debt and low risk. You know, investing your cash into a project like this is bad use of your cash. And this illustration shows why.
All right, thank you, Fran and Robbie. That is such great information. And you're all probably sitting there thinking what great information this is, and maybe also feeling a little overwhelmed and wondering how you can get some help from experts like Fran and Robbie. At Clarity, we're very proud of our startup program, which actually helps practitioners like you build the medical practice of their dreams and walk you through the phases in the proper way with this expertise to help you achieve your goals in your practice. So our program, you can see there's a timeline here. It does go through phases. Each phase takes a certain amount of time and has a certain amount of lessons where all of this is broken down for you. You're given homework step by step, and you get to work with Donna, Robbie, and we have Fran involved with us as well, which we're very proud of. Beyond that, once your practice opens, you get to continue working with Clarity on our platform to help monitor your business and continue that growth and understand how your business is performing. So, with our program, building that aesthetic practice with confidence is so important. And so what we've done is we've taken a streamlined approach to this. Sometimes it's difficult to know what order things should be done in, how you should plan, and making sure that you're taking a step-by-step approach which keeps you on target for what you're looking to do. Our plan does that. It guides you through those steps from the planning stage all the way through launching, and then again, continuing on after you've opened your doors to grow your successful aesthetic practice. We do have those expert insights, again, working with Fran and Robbie with all of her many years of experience, and Donna as well, who has many, many years of experience in this area as well. They've developed the strategies and tools that they have worked with many other practices to achieve opening doors of some very successful medical spas. And we do have flexible support. We understand that oftentimes you are doing other things, you're working other places. This is a project that you're working on. And so we do have some flexibility. This is done through group classes, there are individual meetings. We have resources available on our platform for you and the tools available for you to do your homework at your convenience. We take a comprehensive approach to supporting you through business planning, marketing, and operational setup. We want to make sure, again, that that continued success happens after you open your doors, which continues with patient education, staff training, and like I mentioned before, those performance metrics. How is your business performing, and are you able to make real-time decisions based around actual data of how your business is performing? Our team is also connected with a number of experts and resources in the field, device companies, banks, as you heard them talking about today, other consultants that have specialties that can help you, many, many other resources to help you get your practice going. And this is a turnkey solution. This gives you a roadmap from the very beginning. And again, with those flexible timelines, we understand that this process does not always work on the same timeline for everyone. And so we are flexible with that. And we also have ongoing educational support through our community at Clarity for you and your team for business operations, finance, and sales training. We want to encourage you that if you have specific questions about today's presentation or specific questions about your situation, you can reach out to Robbie. Her email is listed here, and we're going to have some Q&A time if you want to start putting your questions into the chat or the Q&A feature. We're going to get to those. And if you're interested in talking to us more about the details of our program and getting involved with your project at Clarity, you can scan this QR code and you can set a time to discuss with one of our account specialists how to get started. Where are you in your project? What are you hoping to accomplish? And is our program a right fit for you? So I'm going to leave this slide up for everyone so that you can schedule that if you would like to. And we're going to go now to the question and answer time and see if there's any questions that you all have. All right, Donna, do you see any questions?
Don't see any right now.
Okay, let's see here. All right, Robbie, this is a question for you. If we have a practice that's already in process somehow, they've got some ideas, they've started putting things together, maybe they've done a few pieces and parts. Is there still a role for them to participate in the Clarity program and get some assistance with the areas that they're not as familiar with?
So we see this a lot. I mean, this is not uncommon. People will come to us and they many times have already rented a location before they got a loan. So typically yes, there is absolutely a way that you can slip in. When Lindsay went through the program is divided into the stages of development that you'll go through. Of course, whether if you have the money and you don't need to get a loan, we still highly recommend that you build that feasibility, that pro forma, and that business plan. So because as Lindsay referred, that's a roadmap. That's going to tell you what you should expect, where you should land, and all those things. But we also have with the program being divided into phases, and there is a pre-phase of phase of the program, which is just 3 lessons. And this is where many times people will realize that maybe this isn't not for me. Maybe I don't have, I'm not ready to make the kind of commitment it takes to open a practice. So that first 3 lessons is to go through what you need and really drill down on what's going to happen, what this entails. And the way that that's set up is that if you move forward, that is credited back to your purchase. And I don't want to get into pricing, but what I'm really, my point here is to kind of go through the phases. First phase is that feasibility, that pro forma, that business plan, really making sure that you have a true concept. I mean, just because you open an aesthetic practice doesn't mean that it's going to be successful. What makes you different? What are your unique value propositions? What sets you apart? Why would somebody come to you over someone else? I mean, as much as anything, yes, you got to have all the financials, but that is so important. That's the very first part of the process, is knowing what you're doing. And then after that, we get into the design and the construction phase. That particular phase in our program is you can take it or leave it. Many times people don't need help with the lease, or that, like I said, that person that comes to us and says, oh, I've already leased a place, or I've found a place, or I've bought a place. We've even had that happen. So you can opt in or opt out of that. But then the very last phase, which is, if you are to Lindsay's, to the question, this person maybe is already out there, but now it's like, oh my God, what do I do? How do I recruit? Who do I, what software should I use? What do I need to purchase in terms of sundries and supplies? How do I set up a budget? All those things. How do I educate my team? That Fran mentioned that 3 weeks before. So that is that last phase. And we go through different sections or areas of the launch, like your marketing, what you need to do that 2 to 3 months before, so that when you open your doors, you're already a known entity in your community. So, and then as Lindsay said, we will then let you just take you right into Ascend, and we're there to support you as you're growing your practice. Many times, and I'm not, this is not a fear statement. I'm not trying to scare anyone. But the reality is that we see a lot of people that try to do this alone. And then down the road, a year later, you know, they're $200,000 in debt, or they've lost another 200,000. And they want us to come in and help clean up things, turn me around. So the value of this program cannot be, I don't think we can put a value on it. When we look at those instances, the whole point here is for you to open armed and ready to be successful, and, you know, to instill that passion that you had to do this, but not to have all the surprises. I said surprise, pardon my language, but surprises suck. So we want to make sure that you don't have surprises, that you're prepared to go on this journey and have someone there to support you while you're there. So yes, you can come in at different phases, but I don't recommend you skip the feasibility phase, even if you don't need to go get a loan.
Thank you, Robbie. And then another question being, if you're thinking about starting a program, or rather opening a practice, or expanding somehow, and you need this program, what is kind of an ideal timeline to start up a practice? Is this something that they should be getting involved with this program a year in advance, 6 months in advance? What do you kind of see an ideal, if all things, right, we know things don't always go as planned, but if there was kind of an ideal timeline, what do you see that being in your experience?
Fran, you can concur with me on this from your experience. I mean,
I think the ideal timeline, if you give yourself 12 months, that is a sufficient amount of time. Now, Robbie and I have seen these projects go much longer. It's not really what we do that makes it go longer. It's really ownership, the founder, and how fast they're working. Or sometimes it's out of their control. It's how fast the contractor is working, or how long it takes for permitting. So there are outside factors that can throw a wrench into the system. But if everything was going perfectly, 12 months is a sufficient amount of time to launch a practice.
Perfect.
I don't have any statistics, but I've never played with it, but I would say that that's probably the average amount of time it is for for people to get from A to B. We see people that say, oh, I want to be open in 6 months. Well, it takes 3 months just to get your loan and all your other stuff done. So be realistic about doing this to do it right.
And things that could speed things up. And really, it's the real estate. If you lease an existing practice built out the way you want it, and there's no real build out, maybe it's just some paint and paper, that can quicken things quite a bit. But that's the only thing I know of that can shorten the timeline.
And that's one of the things, Fran, that we talk about is, you know, people will say, should I have a retail location or should I be in an office building? Well, the beautiful thing about going in office buildings, because I don't think it makes a bit of difference in your revenue from one to the other,
Agreed.
is that you can come upon these opportunities where there's already treatment rooms in place and waiting and things like that. So we see that a lot. And if you can find that, don't feel like you have to have the flashy, you know, street front
Retail.
Yeah, retail, because it makes no difference, really and truly. Your marketing is not we are not a walk-in business. We are a destination business that people choose, and they'll find you through your marketing. So that's a great point, Fran. That's a way to speed that process up.
Absolutely. I think we have time for one more question. And this question is kind of about who is maybe the right fit to open a practice, to go through this program and work with the team. And so oftentimes there's someone who's an entrepreneur or possibly an esthetician or an RN. And they're looking for someone who will possibly be a medical director for them and things like that. So is this program solely for, physician ownership, or is this open? Do you guys assist other types of owners as well to get their practice started?
Yes, we do. There are some, if you're looking for loans, some lenders have a concern if there's not a physician owner or a nurse practitioner owner, but we do a lot of non-medical owners, and that's a whole different conversation, Fran, the MSO, the legality of that. I mean,
We could do a whole separate
that's even
webinar on
more-
that.
Yeah, that's even more reason to go through to work with someone. If you're not a medical practitioner, because the legality and the regulatory part of that is very important, that you make sure that you're doing all that properly, because the corporate practice of medicine is illegal.
Absolutely. And then we definitely recommend working with professionals as you move through this process, whether that's with Clarity or other professionals. Robbie touches on a very important piece, that legality, making sure that you're setting your practice up properly. So thank you everyone for joining us today. There will be an email that goes out to all attendees after this is processed, and you will get a copy of the recording. And of course, in that chat before we close down the webinar, make sure you look ahead. We will have follow-up webinars with our team here today. We're going to be talking